The outpost floated silently in the darkness of space, a fragile bubble of light and life surrounded by an endless void. It was called Horizon Station, a name that sounded hopeful but felt hollow to those who lived there. The station orbited a planet known only as X-97, a world so far from Earth that its discovery had been more luck than skill. To most people back on Earth, Horizon Station was just another footnote in humanity's slow crawl across the stars. Place where scientists tinkered with theories no one really understood. Dr. Lisa Harrow stood at the center of the control room, her eyes glued to the glowing screens around her. She was tall and lean, with short brown hair that always seemed slightly messy, as if she'd forgotten to comb it after waking up. Her colleagues often joked that she looked like she'd rather be climbing mountains than stuck inside a tin can in space. But Lisa didn't mind the teasing. She loved what she did. For years, she had dreamed of finding proof that humans weren't alone in the universe. And now, here she was, standing on the edge of possibility. Anything yet? Jason Cole asked, leaning over her shoulder. His voice carried a mix of curiosity and boredom. Jason was younger than Lisa, barely into his 30s, with sharp features and a restless energy that made him seem out of place in the quiet hum of the station. He wasn't a scientist by training. His background was in engineering, but he had a knack for fixing things, which made him indispensable. "Nothing new," Lisa replied without looking away from the screen. "Just static, same as yesterday." Maria Ellis, the third member of their team, sat nearby, typing furiously on a keyboard. Unlike Lisa and Jason, Maria preferred to stay behind the scenes. She was soft-spoken and meticulous, with glasses perched on her nose and a notebook always within reach. "We've been broadcasting for weeks," she said, her tone calm but tinged with frustration. "If there's anyone out there listening, they're not answering." Lisa sighed and leaned back in her chair. "Maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe our signal isn't strong enough." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe there's nobody out there to hear us." That comment earned him a glare from both women. "Don't say that," Lisa snapped. "We know intelligent life exists. We've seen the ruins on other planets. Someone built those structures, someone who might still be out there." "Yeah, well, whoever they were, they're probably long gone," Jason muttered under his breath. But he didn't press the issue. He knew better than to argue with Lisa when she got like this. Besides, even he couldn't deny the thrill of the unknown, the idea that somewhere out there, beyond the stars, someone or something might be watching. For the next hour, the three of them worked in silence, adjusting frequencies, tweaking algorithms, and rerunning simulations. It was tedious work, the kind that could drive a person mad if they let it, but Lisa refused to give up. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that humanity was on the verge of something monumental. All they needed was the right combination of signals, the perfect frequency, the exact moment when the universe aligned just so. And then it happened. A sudden spike on the monitor caught Lisa's attention. At first she thought it was interference, some stray burst of radiation bouncing off the station's sensors. But as she studied the data, her heart began to race. This wasn't random noise. It was structured, deliberate, almost mathematical. "Guys," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you need to see this." Jason and Maria rushed over, their earlier fatigue replaced by wide-eyed excitement. Together they analyzed the signal, breaking it down piece by piece. It was unlike anything they'd ever encountered before, a complex pattern of pulses and pauses, repeating itself over and over again. Whatever it wasn't natural. "This has to be artificial," Maria said, her hands trembling as she typed commands into the computer. "It's too precise." "Too intentional. But who sent it?" Jason asked, his voice filled with awe and why. Lisa shook her head. "I don't know, but I think we should respond." Her suggestion sparked a heated debate. Jason argued that responding could be dangerous. They had no idea who or what was on the other end of the signal. What if it was hostile? What if they were inviting trouble they couldn't handle? Maria, meanwhile, sided with Lisa, pointing out that ignoring the signal would mean missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In the end, Lisa won the argument. Using the station's transmitter, she crafted a reply, encoding it with basic mathematical concepts and images of Earth's solar system. It was simple, almost primitive, but she hoped it would convey peace and curiosity. When the message was sent, the entire station fell silent. Everyone gathered in the control room, waiting, watching, holding their breath. Minutes stretched into hours, and just as doubt began to creep in, the monitors lit up again. This time, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The signal flooded the station's systems, drowning out everything else. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. On the main screen, a series of symbols appeared, shifting and changing faster than anyone could follow. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, like staring into the abyss and realizing it was staring back. "What is that?" Jason shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Is it trying to communicate?" "I don't know." Lisa yelled back, her hands flying across the keyboard as she tried to stabilize the system. "But whatever it is, it's powerful." Before anyone could react further, the station shuddered violently. Outside the windows, a massive shadow loomed against the backdrop of stars. A ship, it had to be a ship, was emerging from the darkness. Its shape defied description, a jagged monstrosity of metal and organic material fused together in ways that made the human mind recoil. It was enormous, easily dwarfing Horizon Station, and it radiated a sense of ancient, predatory intelligence. "Oh my God," Maria whispered, clutching the edge of her seat. "What have we done?" Lisa didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind raced, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. They had reached out into the void, hoping to find friends or allies. Instead, they had awakened something far older, far stranger, and far more dangerous than they could have imagined. As the alien ship drew closer, one thing became painfully clear. Humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life wasn't going to be a handshake. It was going to be a test, one they might not survive. The alien ship hung in the void like a dark mountain, its jagged edges glinting faintly in the light of X-97's distant sun. Horizon Station was dwarfed beneath it, a fragile speck compared to the monolithic structure looming above. Inside the control room, tension crackled through the air like static electricity. No one spoke. The only sounds were the low hum of the station's systems and the occasional beep of warning alarms, still triggered by the overwhelming signal. Lisa Harrow stared out the viewport, her hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had dreamed of this moment for years, first contact with an alien species, but now that it was here, she felt nothing but dread. The ship wasn't just massive. It radiated a presence that made her skin crawl, as if it could sense their fear and feed on it. "We need to try communicating again," Maria Ellis said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she typed commands into the computer. "Maybe they're waiting for us to make the next move." Jason Cole shook his head. "You saw what happened last time. That thing nearly fried our systems." "What makes you think they'll respond any differently?" "Because we don't have a choice," Lisa interrupted sharply. "If we sit here and do nothing, they might assume we're hostile or worse, insignificant. We have to show them we're intelligent, not some primitive species flailing around in space." Her words carried weight, but they didn't erase the fear etched onto everyone's faces. Still, no one argued. They all knew Lisa was right. Doing nothing would be suicide. Using the same basic mathematical patterns from their earlier message, Lisa sent another transmission. This time she added more complexity. Images of Earth's geography, diagrams of human anatomy, even snippets of music, carefully chosen to convey emotion. It was a desperate attempt to bridge the gap between two vastly different species, but it was all they had. Minutes passed. Then hours. The alien ship remained motionless, its surface rippling occasionally as if alive. Just when hope began to fade, movement came from the vessel. A smaller craft detached itself from the main body and descended toward Horizon Station. "They're coming closer," Jason exclaimed, pointing at the screen. His voice was a mix of excitement and terror. "What do we do now?" "Stay calm," Lisa ordered, though her own heart was pounding. "Let's see what they want before we jump to conclusions." The smaller craft stopped just outside the station's docking bay. Its design was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a chaotic blend of sharp angles and flowing curves, as if it had been grown rather than built. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the airlock hissed open. Everyone froze. No one had given permission for the alien craft to dock. It shouldn't have been possible. Yet there it was, connected to the station as if it belonged there. Should we go check it out? Jason asked hesitantly. No, Lisa said firmly. We stay here and monitor them remotely. If they're peaceful, they'll find a way to communicate. If they're not... She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought, but the aliens didn't wait for an invitation. Moments later, the station's cameras picked up movement in the corridor leading away from the docking bay. Strange shapes moved with unnatural speed, their forms shifting and twisting as if defying the laws of physics. When they entered the control room, the humans recoiled instinctively. The creatures, Deathworlders, as they would later come to be known, were terrifying. They stood taller than humans, their bodies covered in chitinous armor that shimmered with iridescent colors. Their limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and their faces, if they could even be called that, were featureless except for glowing, multifaceted eyes that seemed to pierce straight through flesh and bone. For several long seconds, neither side moved. The Deathworlders tilted their heads in unison, studying the humans with an intensity that made Lisa feel like a lab rat under a microscope. She swallowed hard and forced herself to step forward. "We mean no harm," she said slowly, raising her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "We sent a signal because we wanted to meet you. To understand you." The Deathworlders didn't respond. Instead, one of them raised a claw-like appendage and pointed at the monitors displaying the station's data. It was clear they understood technology far beyond human comprehension. But whether they cared about communication was another matter. Entirely desperate to break the deadlock, Jason grabbed a nearby tablet and pulled up a holographic map of the solar system. He held it out toward the nearest alien, hoping the visual aid would help bridge the language barrier. "See? This is where we're from," he explained, tapping the image of Earth. "We're explorers, scientists. We're not your enemies." At first, it seemed like the gesture had worked. The Deathworlders leaned closer, their glowing eyes scanning the hologram with obvious interest. But then something went horribly wrong. One of the aliens emitted a low, guttural sound noise that reverberated through the room like rolling thunder. Before anyone could react, it lunged forward, knocking the tablet out of Jason's hands. The device shattered against the wall, sending shards of glass scattering across the floor. "What did I do?" Jason stammered, backing away. "I was just trying to..." His words were cut short as the Deathworlder swiped its claw at him. The blow missed by inches, but it was enough to send panic rippling through the room. Everyone scrambled for cover, shouting and screaming as the aliens advanced. Lisa acted on instinct. Grabbing a prototype energy weapon from a nearby locker, she aimed it at the nearest Deathworlder and fired. The beam struck the creature squarely in its armored chest, causing it to stagger backward. Its companions let out a series of screeching noises, their bodies tensing as if preparing to attack. "No!" Maria shouted, grabbing Lisa's arm. "You can't fight them!" "There's too many." But it was already too late. One of the Deathworlders retaliated, lashing out with incredible speed. The strike caught Jason off guard, slicing through his suit and leaving a deep gash across his shoulder. He collapsed to the ground, clutching the wound as blood seeped between. His fingers panic erupted. The remaining humans fled the control room, leaving behind the injured Jason and the furious aliens. Lisa hesitated for a moment, torn between helping her friend and saving herself. In the end, survival won out. She turned and ran, her mind racing with guilt and fear, back in the safety of the living quarters. The survivors barricaded themselves inside. Maria tended to Jason's wound as best she could while Lisa paced back and forth, replaying the events over and over in her head. "What did we do wrong?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "Why did they attack us?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted, sinking onto the edge of a chair. "Maybe they misunderstood our intentions. Or maybe we crossed some kind of line without realizing it. Outside, the station grew eerily quiet. The Deathworlders hadn't followed them, but their presence was impossible to ignore. Every creak of the metal walls, every flicker of the lights, reminded the humans that they were no longer alone. Hours passed. Eventually, Jason's breathing steadied, though his face remained pale and drawn. Lisa sat beside him, staring at the floor as guilt gnawed at her insides. She had fired the first shot not out of malice, but out of fear. And now, because of her actions, humanity's first contact with an alien species had ended in violence. As dawn broke over X-97's horizon. Casting a faint orange glow through the windows, the station's sensors detected movement outside. The Deathworlder ship was retreating, pulling away from Horizon Station and disappearing into the depths of space. For a brief moment, relief washed over the humans. Maybe it was over. Maybe they had been spared, but deep down, Lisa knew better. The Deathworlders hadn't come here to destroy them. They had come to observe, to test. And now, thanks to her mistake, humanity had failed the test. It wasn't until days later, when reports began pouring in from Earth about strange ships appearing in orbit around other colonies, that the true scope of the situation became clear. The Deathworlders weren't done with humanity. Not by a long shot, and whatever they planned to do next, it wouldn't be pretty. The days that followed the Deathworlders' departure were a blur of fear and confusion. Horizon Station had become a ghost of its former self, its once bustling corridors now silent except for the hum of machinery. Lisa Harrow spent most of her time staring out the viewport, watching the endless expanse of space as if expecting the alien ship to return at any moment. It didn't, but the absence only made things worse. The unknown was always more terrifying than the known. Jason Cole's injury had healed enough for him to move around, though he still winced when he lifted his arm too high. Maria Ellis barely spoke, retreating into herself as guilt and exhaustion weighed her down. None of them could shake the feeling that they had failed not just themselves, but all of humanity. Their actions, however well-intentioned, had turned first contact into a disaster. Back on Earth, news of the encounter spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to respond, launching emergency meetings and deploying military forces to defend against what many assumed would be an imminent invasion. But the Deathworlders didn't attack. Instead, their ships began appearing near other colonies, hovering silently in orbit before vanishing just as quickly. It was as if they were observing, gathering information, deciding what to do next. Then came the disappearances. At first, it was just rumors, reports of people vanishing without a trace from remote outposts and small settlements. But soon, the stories became undeniable. Entire groups of humans were being taken, plucked from their homes or workplaces, and spirited away aboard Deathworlder vessels. No one knew why, and no one dared to guess. Among those abducted was Tommy Reyes, a former Marine turned mechanic who had been working on a mining rig in the asteroid belt. One moment, he was fixing a malfunctioning drill. The next, the air around him shimmered and he found himself surrounded by towering, insect-like creatures. Before he could react, a wave of dizziness washed over him, and everything went black. When Tommy woke up, he wasn't on a spaceship. He was standing on solid ground, though the landscape around him was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The sky above was a swirling mix of crimson and gold, and the ground beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as if alive. Towering trees with translucent leaves stretched toward the heavens, and strange, bioluminescent creatures darted through the underbrush. "Where am I?" Tommy muttered, clutching his head as he tried to steady himself. His voice echoed strangely, distorted by the alien atmosphere. "You're on X-97, a woman's voice said behind him. Tommy spun around, startled. Standing a few feet away was Emily Garza, a high school biology teacher who had been vacationing on a nearby colony when she was abducted. Her dark hair was tangled and her clothes were torn, but she looked otherwise unharmed. "What's going on?" Tommy demanded, his military training kicking in as he scanned their surroundings for threats. "Why are we here?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. They brought me here hours ago. Maybe days I've lost track of time. All I know is that this place, it changes. The environment shifts, and you have to adapt if you want to survive. Before Tommy could ask more questions, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. From the distance, something massive emerged, a creature unlike anything either of them had ever imagined. Its body was segmented, with rows of spiny legs and a mouth filled with jagged teeth. It moved with terrifying speed, charging straight toward them. "Run!" Emily shouted, grabbing Tommy's arm and pulling him forward. They sprinted through the forest, dodging vines and leaping over roots as the creature pursued them. Adrenaline surged through Tommy's veins, sharpening his senses and pushing aside his fear. He spotted a narrow crevice in the ground ahead and veered toward it, motioning for Emily to follow. "This way!" he yelled, sliding into the gap just as the creature lunged past them. Its claws scraped against the rock above, missing them by inches. For several minutes, they lay there, gasping for breath and listening to the sounds of the monster retreating into the distance. When the coast seemed clear, Tommy climbed out of the crevice and helped Emily to her feet. "We can't stay here," he said grimly. "Whatever this place is, it's not safe," Emily nodded. "I think it's some kind of test. The Deathworlders, they're watching us. Testing us, seeing how we handle things." Tommy frowned. "If this is a test, then what happens if we fail?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Both of them knew the stakes. Failure meant death or worse. Meanwhile, back on Earth, panic continued to spread. Military forces stationed near colonies reported sightings of Deathworlder drones descending from the skies, snatching civilians and soldiers alike. Efforts to fight back proved futile. The aliens' technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed. Missiles exploded harmlessly against their shields, and fighter jets were swatted out of the air like insects. Commander Paul Langley watched the chaos unfold from his office in Washington, D.C., a veteran soldier with graying hair and a weathered face. He had spent decades preparing for war, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The Deathworlders weren't just superior in strength. They were unpredictable, their motives shrouded in mystery. Langley knew they couldn't win a direct confrontation. Humanity needed another approach, an alternative to brute force. Gathering a team of scientists, diplomats, and psychologists, he devised a daring plan: send an envoy to X-97. To negotiate with the Deathworlders directly, Lisa Harrow was chosen to lead the mission. Despite her earlier mistakes, she was the only person who had first-hand experience with the aliens. Reluctantly, she agreed, knowing it might be humanity's last chance for peace. On X-97, Tommy and Emily struggled to survive. The planet's ecosystem was a labyrinth of deadly traps and shifting challenges, forcing them to rely on their wits and teamwork. Along the way, they encountered other abducted humans, some cooperative, others hostile. Among them was Rachel Kim, a resourceful engineer who had managed to salvage parts from a crashed drone and build a makeshift weapon. Together, the group formed a fragile alliance, united by their shared goal of survival, but the trials grew harder with each passing day. Rivers of molten lava cut off escape routes, while acid rain burned through clothing and skin. The Deathworlders watched silently from above, their presence felt but never seen. It was clear that they were orchestrating the entire ordeal, pushing the humans to their limits. One night, as the group huddled around a makeshift fire, Rachel spoke up. "Do you think they're trying to kill us? Or are they testing us for something else?" Emily hesitated before answering. "I think they're trying to understand us, to see if we're worth keeping around, and if we're not." Tommy asked quietly. No one responded. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. Days turned into weeks, and the humans began to adapt. They learned to read the signs of the environment, anticipating changes before they happened. They worked together, pooling their skills and knowledge to overcome obstacles. Slowly but surely, they started to prove themselves not just to the Deathworlders, but to each other. In one particularly harrowing challenge, the group faced a swarm of flying predators with razor-sharp wings. Using a combination of strategy and ingenuity, they managed to drive the creatures away, earning a rare moment of respite. As they caught their breath, Tommy glanced at the others and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance, but the Deathworlders weren't done yet. Above them, the skies darkened and a new threat loomed on the horizon. Whatever came next, it would be the ultimate test, one that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of humanity itself. The skies above X-97 darkened and the air grew thick with an eerie tension. The humans huddled together, their makeshift camp surrounded by jagged rocks that offered little protection. Tommy Reyes tightened his grip on a crude spear he had fashioned from salvaged metal, while Emily Garza adjusted the straps of her backpack, making sure the supplies they had scavenged were secure. Rachel Kim fiddled with a small device she had built, a scanner of sorts that emitted faint beeping noises. As it scanned the horizon, "What's coming?" Tommy asked, his voice low but steady. He didn't want to show fear, not in front of the others. They looked to him for strength, even though he often felt just as lost as everyone else. "I don't know," Rachel admitted, frustration creeping into her tone. "This thing can detect movement, but whatever's out there is different. It's like it's everywhere at once." Emily glanced at the sky, her brow furrowed. "They're testing us again, pushing us harder than before." As if on cue, the ground began to shake. Fissures opened up around them, spewing steam and ash. From the cracks emerged creatures unlike anything they had faced, so far massive. Serpentine beasts with glowing eyes and bodies covered in shimmering scales. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as they slithered toward the group with terrifying speed. "Move!" Tommy shouted, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her toward higher ground. The others followed, scrambling over rocks and dodging falling debris. The serpents pursued relentlessly, their hissing filling the air like a chorus of death. Rachel tripped, her ankle twisting painfully as she fell. She cried out, reaching for the device she had dropped. Before she could grab it, one of the serpents lunged, its jaws snapping shut inches from her face. Just as all hope seemed lost, a loud crack echoed through the valley. The serpent recoiled, startled, as Tommy fired another makeshift weapon, a crude projectile launcher loaded with sharpened metal shards. "Get up!" he yelled, helping Rachel to her feet. "We can't stop here." The group pressed on, climbing until they reached a plateau overlooking the chaos below. For a moment, they allowed themselves to catch their breath, watching as the serpents prowled the area where they had been moments earlier. "We can't keep running forever," Emily said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Sooner or later, we'll run out of places to go?" Tommy nodded grimly. "Then we fight. We've survived this long because we've worked together. That's our edge, not weapons or technology, but us." Back on Earth, Commander Paul Langley watched footage transmitted from drones sent to monitor X-97. The images were grainy and distorted, but they showed enough to confirm what he already suspected. The Deathworlders were conducting some kind of trial, pitting humanity against impossible odds. What surprised him most was how well the abducted humans were holding up. Against all logic, they weren't just surviving, they were adapting. Lisa Harrow stood beside him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't spoken much since, agreeing to join the envoy mission, haunted by the guilt of firing the first shot during their initial encounter. But now, seeing the resilience of those on X-97, something stirred within her, a flicker of hope mixed with determination. "They're stronger than anyone expected," Lisa murmured, more to herself than to Langley. "Maybe there's still a chance." Langley turned to her, his expression serious but not unkind. "That's why you're going down there. To remind them and the Deathworlders that humanity isn't defined by its mistakes. We learn, we grow. And we never give up." Lisa nodded, though the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. She knew the mission was risky, possibly suicidal. But if it meant saving billions of lives back on Earth, she would do it without hesitation. When Lisa and her team arrived on X-97, they landed near the coordinates of the human survivors. The planet's environment was harsher than anticipated, with violent winds and oppressive heat that made every step feel like a battle. Still, they pressed forward, guided by signals emitted from Rachel's scanner. It wasn't long before they encountered the group. At first, neither side trusted the other. The survivors were wary of outsiders, especially ones who arrived in sleek ships bearing advanced equipment. But when Lisa stepped forward and introduced herself, explaining her role in the original contact, disaster, a tentative truce formed. "We need your help," Lisa told them, her voice firm yet sincere. "If we can communicate with the Deathworlders, maybe we can end this trial. Maybe we can find a way to coexist." Tommy frowned, skepticism evident in his gaze. "You think talking will make a difference? These things aren't interested in conversation. They're interested in seeing how far we can bend before we break." "I agree," Emily interjected, stepping forward. "But we've proven we're capable of bending. Now it's time to show them we're also capable of standing tall. If Lisa believes communication is possible, then I say we try." After a heated debate, the group decided to work together. Using a combination of Lisa's knowledge of the Deathworlders' behavior patterns and the survivors' first-hand experience with the planet's challenges, they devised a plan to confront the aliens directly. The confrontation took place in a vast canyon, its walls lined with glowing veins of energy that pulsed in sync with the planet's heartbeat. As the humans approached, the air grew dense, charged with static electricity. Then, without warning, the Deathworlders appeared. Their forms shifted and twisted, as if struggling to maintain cohesion in the presence of such raw power. One of them moved closer, its multifaceted eyes locking onto Lisa. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm as she raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "We didn't mean to harm you," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We acted out of fear and misunderstanding. Please let us prove ourselves worthy." For several agonizing seconds, there was no response. The Deathworlders simply observed, their glowing eyes scanning the humans as if dissecting their very souls. Then, one of them extended a claw-like appendage, pointing toward the canyon floor. A holographic projection appeared, showing scenes of Earth, its cities, its oceans, its people. But interspersed with these images were flashes of destruction, wars, pollution, greed. The message was clear: the Deathworlders saw humanity as reckless and dangerous, a species that might bring ruin to the galaxy if left unchecked. Lisa understood immediately. This wasn't just about the skirmish on Horizon Station, it was about everything humanity represented. She turned to the others, her expression resolute. "We have flaws," she admitted, speaking both to the Deathworlders and her companions. "But we also have potential. We create, we dream, we strive to be better. Give us a chance to show you what we can become." The Deathworlders hesitated, their forms rippling as if engaged in silent deliberation. Finally, one of them let out a deep, resonant hum, sound that vibrated through the canyon like a judgment passed. The humans braced themselves, unsure whether it signaled salvation or doom, but instead of attacking, the Deathworlders began to retreat, their forms dissolving into the air like smoke carried away by the wind. The trial wasn't over, but it felt like a turning point, a moment when humanity's fate teetered precariously between survival and annihilation. As the group stood together, battered but unbroken, Lisa allowed herself a small smile. They had taken the first step toward proving their worth. Now, they just had to finish the journey. The canyon fell silent after the Deathworlders vanished, leaving behind an uneasy calm. The humans stood together, their bodies battered and their spirits stretched thin, but alive with a fragile sense of hope. Lisa Harrow exhaled deeply, her shoulders sagging as if she had been holding her breath for hours. She glanced at the others, Tommy, Emily, Rachel, and the rest, and saw the same mix of exhaustion and determination etched onto their faces. "They didn't attack," Emily said softly, breaking the silence. "Does that mean we passed?" Lisa shook her head. "I don't think it's over yet. This trial isn't just about surviving, it's about proving something. Showing them we're worth keeping around." Tommy nodded, his grip tightening on the spear he still carried. "Then let's keep going. Whatever they throw at us next, we'll handle it." The next challenge came sooner than expected. As the group moved deeper into the canyon, the ground beneath their feet began to crack and shift. Steam erupted from fissures, and the air grew hotter, making it hard to breathe. Then, without warning, the walls of the canyon started closing in. Massive slabs of rock grinding against each other as if the planet itself was trying to crush them. "Run!" Tommy shouted, leading the way toward a narrow gap in the distance. The others followed, their legs burning with effort as they pushed themselves to keep moving. Behind them, the rumbling grew louder, the walls inching closer with every second. Rachel stumbled, her injured ankle giving out under the strain. Emily reached down to help her up, but the ground beneath them split open, sending both women tumbling into a deep crevice. Tommy and Lisa skidded to a halt at the edge, peering down into the darkness. "We're okay," Emily called up, her voice shaky but firm. "But we can't climb out of here." Tommy cursed under his breath. He turned to Lisa. "We need a rope or something." "There's no time," Lisa replied, her mind racing. "If we don't move now, the walls will crush all of us." "Then what do we do?" Tommy demanded, his frustration boiling over, before Lisa could answer. A low hum filled the air, the sound of the Deathworlders' drones descending from above. One of them hovered near the crevice, extending a claw-like appendage toward Emily and Rachel. Without hesitation, the two women grabbed hold, allowing the drone to lift them out and deposit them safely on solid ground. For a moment, the group simply stared at the drones, unsure what to make of this unexpected assistance. Then, as if satisfied with their reaction, the machines retreated, disappearing into the sky. "They helped us," Rachel whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Why? Maybe we're getting through to them," Lisa suggested, though her tone betrayed her own uncertainty. "Or maybe they're just making sure we stay alive long enough to finish the trial." Whatever the reason, the reprieve was short-lived. The canyon walls continued to close in, forcing the group to sprint toward the exit. Just as the gap seemed impossibly far away, Tommy spotted something, a control panel embedded in the rock face, glowing faintly with alien symbols. "That's new," he muttered, pointing it out to the others. "Think it controls the walls?" "It's worth a shot," Lisa said, stepping forward. She studied the panel carefully, her fingers tracing the symbols as she tried to decipher their meaning. After a few tense moments, she pressed one of the buttons. The grinding noise stopped instantly, and the walls froze in place, leaving just enough room for the group to squeeze through. They wasted no time, scrambling out of the canyon and collapsing onto the rocky terrain beyond. As they caught their breath, the landscape around them began to change. The harsh, desolate environment softened, giving way to lush greenery and clear streams. The air smelled sweet, like fresh rain, and the oppressive heat faded into a gentle warmth. For the first time since arriving on X-97, the humans felt a glimmer of peace. "This doesn't feel like another test," Emily said, her voice tinged with awe. "It feels safe." "Don't get too comfortable," Tommy warned, though even he couldn't deny the relief washing over him. "They've got something else planned, I'm sure of it." He was right. Moments later, the ground trembled, and a massive structure rose from the earth, a towering spire made of shimmering metal and pulsating energy. At its base was an opening large enough to fit several people, and inside the Deathworlders waited, without speaking, the humans approached, their steps slow and deliberate. The Deathworlders stood motionless, their glowing eyes fixed on the group. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then one of the creatures stepped forward, raising a claw-like hand. A holographic projection appeared, showing scenes of Earth. Once again, but this time, the images were different. Instead of destruction, the holograms depicted humanity's achievements: art, science, exploration, compassion. There were glimpses of cities lit by innovation, children laughing in parks, astronauts floating in space. It was as if the Deathworlders were acknowledging not just humanity's flaws, but also its potential. Lisa felt tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew it was significant. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, addressing the Deathworlders directly. "You see us now," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat, "not as enemies, but as learners, as dreamers. We may have made mistakes, but we're trying to be better. Give us the chance to grow, and we won't let you down." The Deathworlders tilted their heads in unison, as if considering her words. Then, one of them emitted a low hum, the same resonant sound they had made earlier. This time, however, it felt less like judgment and more like acceptance. The spire began to glow brighter, its energy enveloping the humans in a warm, golden light. When the light faded, the Deathworlders were gone, and the structure had vanished along with them. In their place was a single object, a small, crystalline device resting on the ground. "What is it?" Rachel asked, kneeling to examine it. "I think it's a message," Lisa replied, picking it up carefully. "A way for us to communicate with them, if we choose to." Back on Earth, news of the survivors' return spread quickly. Commander Langley greeted Lisa and the others personally, his expression a mix of pride and relief. The world watched as footage of the mission aired, showing humanity not as victims, but as resilient beings capable of growth and adaptation. The Deathworlders didn't disappear completely. Their ships remained in orbit around X-97 and other colonies, watching silently. But instead of hostility, their presence felt almost protective, as if they were guardians rather than conquerors. In the weeks that followed, scientists worked tirelessly to decode the crystalline device. What they discovered was astonishing. The Deathworlders had left behind instructions, not for war, but for cooperation. They offered humanity a path forward, a chance to learn from their vast knowledge and join the galactic community under strict conditions. It wasn't an easy decision. Some argued that trusting the Deathworlders was too risky, while others believed it was humanity's only chance to evolve. In the end, the choice was unanimous. Humanity would accept the offer, not as equals, but as students eager to prove themselves. Months later, Tommy and Emily stood on a hill overlooking Horizon Station, which had been rebuilt and expanded. The scars of the past were still visible, but so was the promise of the future. Together they gazed up at the stars, knowing that humanity's journey was just beginning. "We did it," Emily said quietly, a smile playing on her lips. "We survived." Tommy nodded, his eyes reflecting the light of distant suns. "Yeah. And now it's our turn to show them what we're really made of?" Far above, the Deathworlder ship lingered in orbit, its presence a reminder of the challenges ahead and the opportunities waiting among the stars. Humanity had taken its first real step into the cosmos, not as conquerors but as humble explorers ready to learn.